when I was two, my parents moved with me and my sister from New Jersey, where their relatives all lived. We first moved to Canton, Ohio. And so over the years, we would go home to New Jersey at the holidays, maybe not every year. And I remember taking the long drive in the car for a long time. It was our station wagon, our 77 Oldsmobile station wagon. Um, and we both grandparents lived towns neighboring each other. And I can remember being at the Elefantes, my mom's dad's side of the family, with my grandparents there. There'd be aunts and uncles and cousins and all kinds of people that came over. They had a small Cape Cod house and with a basement. And I remember them using the ping pong table and other big tables in the basement to set up, with the tablecloth for Christmas dinner. And what I remember most is the hors d'oeuvres, and they were better than the dinner. There was cheeses and olives and crackers and all kinds of yummy stuff that we nuts and indulge on. And Italian family, lots of food. There was always some kind of pasta dish to go along with turkey and ham and everything else that we had. And it was quite a festivity of food. So we would celebrate during the day at the Elefantes, and then we would go to the Menzos for dessert. And so this is my dad's side of the family, and my aunts and my uncle and their spouses and my cousins would be there, and everyone would bring a dessert. There was cannolis, Italian cream pie. There was a Hackensack pastry coffee cake. The crumb topping on it was thicker than the cake. It was amazing. It was one of my favorites. There'd be cookies. There'd be just tons of desserts. It was just plethora. And we'd celebrate with them. We'd do gift exchanges. That's the side of the family that often played cards, or at least that's what I remember, especially when I was younger. Them all playing cards. I don't know if they were betting loose change or whatever they would bet for some money. I can hear my grandmother laughing. She passed away when I was 12, but having these memories of the holidays and food and spending time with my grandparents and extended family. And we'd often, then we'd be driving back home. And what I remember for the most part is that Santa had left the gifts back home. And so I seem to remember my dad going inside and checking the house to make sure everything was okay before we all went inside. And it might have been that he was putting the gifts out. And
The naive thoughts we had as
then
child.
we'd have that to look forward to coming home to more presents. I do have a memory of one year that Santa brought the presents to New Jersey for us, that he knew where we were or something. And
He always knows where you are. It's a little scary.
so just fun memories of my grandparents and lots of food. My grandma Elefante, um, I never saw her sit down. There'd be food out upstairs. Her siblings would be coming. So my great aunts and uncles and all these people would be coming over, and there'd be all this food, and she was in the kitchen and she was constantly cooking. And I'm like, I kind of like felt like she never ate. When does grandma eat? She was always upstairs in the kitchen. And just kind of things I thought about as I got older. But these fun memories. My grandmother's standing outside smoking her cigarettes outside her kitchen because
There's a fun memory.
she because of my brother's asthma and severe allergies, she started smoking outside. And I want to say in the beginning, it might have only been when we came, but then I don't think she smoked inside like anymore for quite some time. But so just picturing the family, all the people, just tons of people being around. I remember one of my great uncles, we'd gather in the basement to take a picture and he'd get everything all set up and then he'd realize there's no film in the camera and just kind of some classic goofy great uncle kind of behavior. And most of my cousins are quite a bit younger than me. So for the most part, when I was a child, there wasn't lots of other cousins around. My Uncle Jerry, his girls are maybe 5, 7 years younger than me. And so I remember when they were around, my sister and I kind of were like their babysitters, playing with them, being our younger cousins. So lots of good family
Yeah.
traveling memories from my youth.
Being that we're so close to Christmas, we decided to put those on as an opening to our statements. But hello, this is Don,
And this is Gina with Focused Healthy Family.
and this is podcast number 146. And today, even though we're not talking necessarily about Christmas, we're talking about dementia in the media and how it can affect a lot of different things. So anyway, yeah, talking about your Christmas stories,
You had a Christmas story you were going to share, Don?
yeah, well, it was just really about one of my favorite parts of the holidays. We did things differently in our house. Christmas came early for us, so we would have our Christmas on Christmas Eve because Santa had to get out early on certain things, is what the question was. But my favorite one was there was one of the years I loved to watch. One of my favorite things to watch back then was the Christmas Carol. And so I watched that, and then we went to midnight mass, which was at we didn't do it every year, but this particular year we decided to go because a friend of ours, my brother, my oldest brother, was in seminary for a long time, didn't become a priest, but one of his friends did, and had a mass at the most unusual place at a hospital called DePaul, which I was born in. But they had a chapel there, and he was doing a midnight mass there. And we came out, we went through the mass, we came out, and there was this light dusting of wonderful snow coming down, this wonderful, and it was just a kind of angelic kind of feeling of all the good things that my my history was about. Watching the film I watched, we went to an early mass with a friend, and then the snow came, and then we went home and we had hot chocolate, which we didn't always have at two, I don't know, it was like 1:30 or 2 o'clock in the morning. And it was a fun way to start the holiday. It was just kind of a neat thing. So anyway, just wanted to throw that out.
So we're approaching Christmas and talking about Christmas. And this conversation kind of sparked from the new Netflix show that's called
Man on the inside.
with Ted Danson. And we got talking about how dementia is portrayed in the media. And so we kind of wanted to back up and kind of look to the past and look at how it has been portrayed kind of incorrectly. So I found a website, a blog that talks about dementia films getting it wrong. And they talk about a movie called Away from Her. So it talks about she's a woman living in her 70s, and she announces to her husband that she's reached that stage, that she needs to go into a nursing home, and makes that decision. And, they talk about how that's really not typical that someone with dementia is going to make a decision like that. And it's not typically like, okay, all of a sudden I need a nursing home now. It's not that kind of transition. And so, there's portrayals of dementia that don't really get it right, don't do it justice, and kind of really it can be very misleading. Um,
Well, plus the idea of 70 is not that that's unusual nowadays. We see that, but back when that was even coming out, that idea of 70s was a tough one. Somebody that goes into it at that point would have been somebody a lot older, I would think.
well, often the onset it can be in the
But
70s, but you typically don't necessarily
at
need
70s,
that
you don't stand up and go, it's
level
time.
of care. In reality, someone with Alzheimer's becomes dependent emotionally as well as physically, that they have different um, things that go on just besides memory loss. In the movie The Notebook, it it portrays that she has a memory loss and facial recognition loss, when in reality, there's so many other things that typically go along. Someone in late stages of Alzheimer's, they forget how to eat, they forget how to get dressed. They can even, they might still be mobile, but they, are not doing these other things, and can become contracted. Their muscles can tighten up if they become immobile, and they frequently might be having their hands in fists. I work with many people in this situation, and it sort of becomes a habit. And then you have issue of fingernails digging into the palms of the hand. I have someone I've been working with at one of the facilities, and my whole treatment with her is getting a warm washcloth and trying to get inside the palm of her hand for hygiene, as well as trying to relax those tight muscles that she wants to keep her hands like this. So there's so many other aspects that can go along with dementia and Alzheimer's that are not properly portrayed. In the Notebook, it's a sentimental story, and he's telling the story to his wife, and she magically remembers, by him telling the story. And sure, there are people with dementia have moments of lucidity where they're able to recall and, speak clearly on things. And yet, it's not portrayed, it's really romanticized in this movie. And this goes on to name some other movies. There's one called Lovely Still. It's a late life romance. A charming older woman comes to the life of an older man. They hints there's something more going on.
Well, even in that movie, I remember that movie, and I like James Garner, so I look. But every time he comes, they pretty much can sit down and read this book, and that
Kind of
I
picks up from where he left off. Yeah.
yeah, and the one that she's not going to remember that too, that every time you show up, you're going to be able to sit down with them and do a certain project or a certain, you know, not to say,
I mean, the consistency, yeah, is great. Yet being able to pick up from where you left off, I mean, they're not going to maybe not remember you being there the previous
well, yeah, I was
time. The
going to say that, or
cohesiveness of telling a story like that is not likely. Yeah. So there's many, they kind of glorify it, they kind of romanticize it, and kind of leave out some real and, you know,
well, I
powerful
mean,
truths.
what I was
And
also saying was that that they may get there and they might be anxious and in on a different plane, than they were before. That you can't just sit down necessarily with them and get them. I remember even sometimes with your dad, there were times we come in and you could sit and talk with him, and other times he'd be anxious and want to get up and move and go and do things. And every time he came, that was the story. Anyway,
yeah,
I just
yeah. And it looks so differently in different people. Um, and so, unfortunately, their attempt to portray dementia and what it, can look like, um, can be misleading, just like other aspects of the human experience. And yet, it's an area that I know a lot about. And after you've been through it, you know a lot about. But to put that image and those ideas out there in that way, kind of does some disservice
Mhm.
to, the reality of what it can really look like. Um,
Well, can you sit down in front of a show like that and watch it without getting a little bit um well, if somebody's been through it, like we not even somebody that has it as a profession, but somebody who's sat through it might look at that and go, well, that doesn't help anything, that doesn't encourage anything to watch, to see that
well, yeah, because it's like, wow, look at this beautiful story and this beautiful life, and that
this
is
isn't happening
not
for
what
me.
we're experiencing. So this same author that wrote Getting It Wrong, also wrote a blog, Dimension Films Getting It Right, and we'll have to share the link to this. It's the Silver Century Foundation. Um, um, and so there's a movie called Still Alive. It says it's an accurate portrayal of Alzheimer's disease. Um, and so, she talks about this movie and how they do a better service. She lists some other movies where they do portray um, things more accurately that show more aspects of it. It's really much more. There's more to it than just memory loss and not knowing who people are. Um, I've seen caregivers come in and mistakenly, someone with dementia, do you know who I am? And with different types of dementia, they don't forget who their family members are. That doesn't always happen. And so it really can be condescending in a way. And so it's important to understand the type of dementia that your loved one is dealing with and to, look at these things critically and to realize, it can be a form of discussion to watch this and kind of have a discussion about it. And, um, just the things that feel true and not. And because two people with dementia are two different people with dementia, and it can look so incredibly different. You talk about my dad, and when we go to visit him, and we never knew what one day he was giving a seminar, one day he's angry and agitated, one day he's sleeping, one day he's kind of acting like his usual self and engaging and participating in an activity. And for other people, it looks very different. Some people really close down, they sleep a lot. They're in bed. They kind of push out the world. And so I found another blog talking. It's TV shows from 2022 talking about caregiving moments and applauding some of these different series for looking at it. And the first thing that came to my mind, even before I pulled up this article, was the TV show This Is Us. So if it was a big show for a number of years and still can be viewed on one of the platforms. And it covers the course of a life of a young couple, but it spans over time. In the final seasons, the mother is dealing with dementia, and she even gets diagnosed with mild cognitive impairment, which is a real thing. And there's assessments that can show that you have that initial mild cognitive impairment. And it doesn't necessarily mean full dementia, but it can be an indicator of that. And, kind of dealing with her coming to terms with it. And, there's an episode where she gets lost and, you know, having to realize when she needs more assistance and more care. And so they really touch on different aspects and how it affects the different members of the family and the different children and the way they want to deal with it and approach it. I mean, that story has so many heart-touching moments.
Yeah.
Um, we've talked about it before and just parenting examples and ways of handling things that it has so much more depth and dimension than some typical TV shows, just portraying typical American family life. It kind of covers some of the different.
Yeah, I mean, they had, I mean, they kind of mixed it all in one family, which isn't always as true, but, one family who kind of wanted to deny it, one family that, that wanted to do everything for her, and so, because you do have that, you'll have one that wants to do everything for him, or the person, even when they're just at the very beginning stages of it. And that's one thing you don't want to necessarily do is you want them to build their own cognitive brain, keep working it, keep, training things on it. And then you have the one that denies it, that, oh, they're getting older and it's getting, they're just losing some of their memory from their age. And some of that, I mean, can be true, but yet to deny it altogether once she's had a diagnosis.
Memory loss is really not part of normal aging. Um,
Yeah,
People think of it that way. Oh, that's just to be expected. And yet it's not. When you're looking at the underlying disease process going on and really understanding the different types of dementia and how it can manifest differently, how it can progress differently in different people, but really looking at the whole perspective of it. And like, TV show This Is Us, it did an episode on kind of her having her agency over her own care and being able to make decisions about what she wanted. It covers, the whole idea of the sandwich generation and how the different characters have to navigate. This is, their parent, and what are they going to do? What choices are they going to make? One of them wants to move mom to where they live because they have the financial resources to do that. And yet then they're far away from the other family members. And just and how the family gatherings change over the years as they're getting together. Um, with her mom now, was the center kind of the family, and now she's dealing with her own dementia and can have some withdrawal involved in being around everybody and being a part of it.
What was nice too in it that they talked a little more ahead of time about things, which that's one thing that we really try to help to promote is to get people to talk about it as early as possible, before they get into it, and they did that, which was great, but not every family wants to do that at this point.
I was reading through this list of other TV shows that kind of got it right, and this one really intrigues. It's called Our Italian Christmas Memories. Apparently, it was a Hallmark show, and it focuses on a family seeking to recreate a beloved recipe. So the adult siblings step in to support their grandfather um, in order to allow their mother, who's the primary caregiver, to have a respite vacation. So she's off on vacation. They're caring for him, and also trying to recreate a favorite recipe from childhood. So that's something I personally want to see. Apparently, Abbott Elementary touched on some episodes of family caregiving issues.
We haven't.
Reasonable Doubt. I'm just Station 19. I watched that show.
Yeah. Yeah. What if they talking about the senior the one captain who was kind of losing his memory. I can't remember what I don't I watch it somewhat, not as much as you do, but there was one that they were having problem with his memory. That I can't think of.
Okay.
Anyway,
Yeah, Grey's Anatomy, another one of my favorite shows. Season 18, episode 13, a doctor and patient discuss difficulties of single parenting and the need for support. Um, these kind of this review is of just caregiving and how it portrays in these different episodes, although they routinely cover caring for grandparents, aging people is a common theme that occurs on this show. And it doesn't mean they always get it right. Um, but, you know, trying to humanize and really get the multiple aspects that can be involved and not misleading. But it can be a great conversation piece to have, to watch a film or to discuss it with loved ones who live far away. You're dealing with caring for an aging loved one, your siblings, whoever else is involved, whether it's cousins or other family members. You can talk about things, you can kind of compare and contrast. And, wouldn't it be nice if it looked like this picture that they portray in this show or this movie? But in reality, this is what it looks like. And, there
well,
can be gifts in it depending on the situation. And um, you can also see other portrayals and go, wow, okay, we don't have it like that. We don't have an angry person who's in denial and doesn't want to leave their home and is refusing to leave and is, there can be different aspects of challenges that you encounter. And so,
well, the other gifts are like I remember. I think it was with your dad when there were a couple of times in those times when you came away with like a little heart-centered thing that he did, something that he would have done maybe in this past or whatever. And those are the kind of gifts you can kind of look at too and try to see that in them, um, to ease some of that that those feelings yourself because they do have their light moments. I can remember even with my mom in that little time we had with her uh, when she was having dementia. But the idea of cookies with our two youngest, she kind of snapped back just for a little
we
bit
went to
there.
visit her. Her last year She was in a nursing home. She had moved into an assisted living because of memory issues. She had had a heart attack and couldn't go back. She was in a nursing home, and we went for a visit. We had gone out there to visit her around the holidays and brought cookies, and we brought them out, so she could have them and share, with our older kids at the time were elementary school age.
Um,
And she did something or said something to indicate, not too many cookies or
yeah, it was kind of like the other moment I remember with her back in the hospital when she was in and she was kind of not there all the time, but there was this one point somebody asked her about ice cream. She said, "Grown-ups always eat ice cream."
the
And
ins
so those little things, I don't know, they can really make a difference and make just make it a little bit lighter
seeing those
sometimes.
glimmers of their real personality
Yeah,
and of who they are and of understanding. Because even though your mom was not saying a whole lot in her
yeah,
last months when we went to that visit, I think she had some expressive aphasia and yet just the look on her face and knowing her and knowing, the way she would typically respond with grandkids, to understand that.
yeah.
So with the holidays approaching, if you have any time off, we will share some links to this. You can critically look at some of these different films and TV shows and have your own conversations about the reality of it, the challenges of it. Be sure to check out the ones that are recommended as more accurately depicting it and let us know if there's other shows or things that you've watched, the portrayal or your own experience, or things you wish you would see portrayed, or things that are just adamantly like that's just not realistic. I mean, I know I watch these medical dramas and the kids will hear me say, and they're like, Mom, it's just TV. And I'm like, that wouldn't happen. My favorite is comas. They just wake up and they're walking. I'm like, I worked with people in comas. They woke up and they had to relearn everything.
We even was it yesterday I was watching this Royal Pains, which is about a doctor, and he runs into all kind, people. There's always somebody fainting, and there's always somebody, But there was one where he was talking about which clicked on Abby's um, her insight about dogs. It was talking about dogs and about a dog had gotten um, some type of rabies or something, and it got inside the gentleman, inside of him. And she looked at him. And she said, "That doesn't. It never works in a. But it's the film, I guess, um, but so if you think about if you want to watch the show Man on the Inside,
Yes.
it's
So, spoiler alert, this is a new show that was recently released on Netflix,
Netflix, yeah,
and
and
it's season one, but there's evidence that there will be a season two.
yes,
We will try not to give away too much, but in a nutshell,
it's about a real life story about a gentleman.
it's based on a true story.
Sorry, based on a true story about a gentleman from Brazil who was asked to do a little spy work in a nursing home because of uh, at the time the patient thought his mother was being mistreated in this nursing home, and so this man, his name is Sergio Chamas, and he's 83 years old, and he was hired as this private investigator to go into this nursing home in Brazil. We won't mention the name of it. Um, and
So it wasn't his mother, it was
no, and
he.
he wasn't after a jewel, which is, oh,
Oh,
we probably shouldn't mention it,
well,
but
in the
that's,
Netflix show,
yeah,
a family member, a son of a resident of the nursing home, her necklace gets stolen. And so he goes to a private investigator to investigate
yeah,
this. And the private investigator winds up hiring this elderly man to move in
yeah.
and, to the facility like a regular resident and be the man on the inside to investigate. So in this real life situation,
He
was
came in
concerned
just
about
worried about concern for his mother,
her care. And so
and they talk about how he was he didn't have the because they even bring this up a little bit in the movie about not knowing the how to use your different phones and stuff like that. He didn't have his technic the technology part of it down pat, but he did blend well with the people in the nursing home. And it found out at the end that the mother wasn't mistreated, and that what they really found in it, and they bring this up in the show too, is that it was really about loneliness, about the people in the nursing home feeling alone, and and, and that was what I think why I was reading about why the producer decided to go with it is they wanted to get that message out. They wanted to talk about what's going on in the nursing home. What can we do to help and try to get things maybe changed a little bit with it.
And in the TV show, The Man on the Inside, it's not at a nursing home. It's at an independent.
System like yeah, I guess it was a well no there was a
There was
uh,
a memory care unit,
memory care unit. So I
but it
think
was
it
an
probably
independent or assisted living
yeah this
community. It wasn't, yeah, necessarily, and that's, nuance of the differences of things. But yeah, these it's more typical now, that it's assisted living facility. Yeah, I found it very interesting how they talked about the memory care unit. And now I know they often give them different names. Um,
ah
and because, to them, it was like that dark place of, going to when those people go in there and then you never see them again, because often people move into assisted living community and then transition to the memory care unit. And just kind of hearing that perspective, I'd never quite thought about it that way. I see it as a positive that they have a unit to support people, but people
but
seeing
those
it
people
as
in it
those people that live in there. And, because they tell the story in the TV show that his wife had died and that he had cared for her and she had Alzheimer's. And
hmm,
somehow the children didn't know, were unaware, that his daughter was unaware that he had gotten to that point where he was ready to move her in and had signed her up. And then she had passed away before he actually moved her in, but just feeling the guilt
yeah
of going to that place, and that they giving it a different name. It's often called a village, or I'm trying
a
to think of
neighborhood. It was a
the
neighborhood in there.
neighborhood. Yes. And just how that can be portrayed and the misunderstandings that can happen. And that's where I think it's important that the media sheds some light on some other nuances and aspects of it, because it's kind of like the old style nursing home, and what so many people I see in the baby boomers and older generation, they don't want to go to a home. They don't want to wind up in a nursing home. And their image of it is what I call the old school kind of nursing home, where you go in and it smells and there's people in the hallway yelling and calling out. There are places that still look like that. And yet, if you're able to afford an assisted living facility, a lot of times people don't need a full-on nursing home. That's someone that needs regular nursing care. They have more than basic needs as far as medicine, you know, getting fed and bathed and all those things. It's a cost factor, though, that if they can afford to live in a facility. But there's so many different types now, and there's new regulations that have been put in place that, kind of take away some of the challenges that they had in the past. Um, but some people just have this negative image in their mind of what that means, what that looks like, and maybe they had bad experiences from their past or had heard stories. I remember my one great grandmother lived in a nursing home her later years. She was blind from diabetes, I believe, and which was probably a primary reason that she was living there. So this is back in the goodness, the 80s, um, before they invented things like assisted living facilities. And I remember going, and I remember kind of the halls and walking around. And I just remember my mother interacting with the people in the hallway and making that effort. And it just really kind of stuck out to me, just the humanity that she took the time to talk to these other people that were confused or didn't know what was going on. And it's kind of interesting because that was long before I even knew about the field of occupational therapy, or before I ever knew I would wind up working in geriatrics. And just kind of a little positive memory that she made that effort to connect with these people who, like you talk about, that loneliness. There are so many people that live in different facilities of all kinds that don't have loved ones who come around or even call very often. And there is quite a loneliness. They'll be reaching out to hold your hand or just want you to talk to them as you're walking past them in the hallway because people don't take the time or have the time to stop and talk with them. And so when our kids were younger, we did some holiday gatherings and went to nursing home on a number of occasions. My sister would bring one of her therapy dogs that was great for taking into a facility, and we'd go there and visit with the people. And it can be such a beautiful thing to take that time to do that and connect with the older generation. The other thing I did is I was homeschooling my oldest when they were young elementary ages. We had a group of couple other families, and we went once a month to a small assisted living facility in our community, and we did an activity with the residents. And sometimes it was coloring or making a project or different kinds of activities. And it was just neat to be able to engage the children, with these, I call them the grandparents, kind of our adopted grandparents. At that time, their grandparents didn't live real close. And, being able to go and spend time with these people and, they just lit up to see the kids come in. And I just love that experience of being able to expose my kids to that and to be able to embrace this older generation and see them as humans. That they have so much to give and so many stories that they can tell. Even someone with dementia sometimes can, just have so many gifts in having a conversation with them. It can be very unexpected. So thank you for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. Please share it with those that you know. Don and I, with Focused Healthy Family, we talk all things parenting our parents, our children, and ourselves. You can see some of our earlier podcasts covering more direct hands-on parenting challenges, but as well as navigating this journey of caring for aging loved ones. We'd love for you to like us, give us a comment, give us feedback, and please join us on our journey as we discover other areas and other topics of conversation and interviews that we'll do in this podcast. Join us for the Ask the OT that we're doing a couple times a month. You join us live on YouTube, submit a question ahead of time, asking your own questions that you have about caring for an aging loved one. Join Don. In fact,
Ask the OT tonight at 7 o'clock. Well, this will be late, but next.
So Ask the OT is not Join Don. Join Don is EFT tapping. Sometimes he still gets his words mixed up. Don does tapping sessions a couple times a month. There will be one on December 18th at noon Eastern time. You can look back to the previous ones that he's done. He's doing one the day we record this, but this is the day before that this podcast airs. But you can learn about EFT. You can join in on a session. You can learn a little bit about it. It doesn't matter what you're bringing to the table, just bringing yourself and learning a new tool for helping yourself cope, dealing with anxiety, just dealing with daily issues. Follow us at focusedhealthyfamily.com. You can see us on Facebook, on Instagram, YouTube. And reach out, ask your questions if you want to work one-on-one with us, if you have a particular issue caring for an aging loved one, or if you're dealing with a family member with anxiety, dealing with challenges in any way, please reach out to us. We'd love to be of support and help for you. And remember, how you speak to your children and your loved ones today shapes their future and yours.